It was 10:40 on a Wednesday morning. Nia stood with the practiced stillness of a professional who owned her space. She was dressed in tailored slacks and a sharp blazer, a leather messenger bag resting on her hip. Her posture was impeccable, her focus absolute. She'd given a polite nod to the security guard. He'd looked straight past her. Now, standing against a far wall, she scrolled through a file on her phone, murmuring quietly into a hidden earpiece. To any observer, she was a professional waiting for an appointment. But Brenda Mills, behind the gleaming reception desk of Vertex Solutions Group, wasn't a reasonable observer. "Look at her," Brenda whispered to her co-worker, her voice laced with venom. "Just standing there like she owns the place. What's her game?" The other receptionist offered a lazy shrug and returned to her screen. Brenda's suspicion curdled into certainty. The dark blazer, the quiet talking into an earpiece, the way she stood apart. It all felt wrong. It felt threatening. She never once considered asking, "Can I help you?" Instead, her fingers tightened on the phone receiver. "Security," she announced, her voice sharp and loud. "There's a woman in the lobby. She's acting very suspicious. She looks completely out of place, and I think you need to send someone to check her out." That was all it took. A single poisoned phone call. Upstairs, Nia's high-level contact was running 5 minutes behind. Down below, a storm was brewing, and Nia was at its center. A Boston PD cruiser was already pulling up to the curb. The dispatch was thin on details but thick with urgency. A suspicious person at a downtown high-rise. Enough to get a fast response. Officer Rick Fuller was behind the wheel, a familiar smirk already twisting his lips. 5 years on the force, and he'd developed a sixth sense for putting people in their place. His partner, Chloe Webb, was quieter, her face unreadable as the radio crackled. "Dispatch, we have a female, black, mid-30s in the main lobby," the voice said. "Caller says she might be casing the building." Fuller cut the siren. "Casing the lobby," he scoffed, shooting a look at Webb. "She's getting bold." "Could just be a misunderstanding, Rick," Webb said evenly. "It's never a misunderstanding," Fuller shot back, his hand already resting on his Sig Sauer P320 as he pushed the car door open. Inside, Brenda watched them enter, a thrill of vindication running through her. She folded her arms, a smug look on her face. Nia had just opened a new encrypted file. She leaned in toward her mic. "Asset is confirmed, awaiting my go-ahead." The glass doors of the lobby hissed open. "All right, lady, party's over," Fuller's voice boomed, cutting through the quiet. "You and I are going to have a little chat." Nia looked up. Her expression was perfectly calm, with just a flash of weary recognition. "Of course, officer. How can I help you?" "Get away from the wall," Fuller barked, ignoring her question. "Let me see your hands. Right now." Nia's eyes hardened, not with fear, but with a sudden, tired clarity. She slowly raised her empty hands. "I'm with the Bureau," she said, her voice steady. "I have a scheduled meeting in this building." Fuller's smirk widened into a sneer. "The Bureau. The Bureau of what? Making trouble? Let's see some ID, pal." "The Federal Bureau of Investigation," Nia stated, her tone flat. Fuller let out a short, ugly laugh. "The FBI? That's a new one. You got a badge to go with that story?" "I do," Nia said, her hand still up. She nodded toward her bag. "It's in my purse." "Don't you dare," Fuller snapped, his body going rigid. "Don't. Move." Nia froze, her federal training overriding every other instinct. Her hands were rock steady. The air in the lobby turned to ice. "I'm simply telling you where my credentials are located," she said, a new sharp edge in her voice. Officer Webb shifted uneasily, her gaze bouncing between her partner and Nia. "On the floor. Put the bag on the floor and open it. Nice and slow," Fuller commanded. Nia complied, moving with fluid grace. She knelt, unzipped the main compartment, and slid the bag onto the marble floor. "My badge and credentials are in the side pocket. Feel free to retrieve them yourself." Fuller didn't budge. A muscle in his jaw jumped. He just stared, as if he could force her to be the criminal he already decided she was. "My meeting is with the Vertex Solutions Group," Nia said, breaking the tense silence. "It's a federal matter. You're welcome to contact Deputy Director Cassandra Shaw at the Boston field office to confirm. No call was made. Officer Webb glanced at the receptionist, Brenda Mills, who just stared back, a silent, satisfied spectator. Fuller's patience shattered. "I'm done playing games," he barked. "On the floor, face down, now." Nia slowly lowered herself to the cold marble, her gaze locked on Fuller. Lying face down, she took in everything. Fuller's aggressive stance, Webb's hesitation, and the receptionist's smug smirk. At the desk, Brenda's smugness began to sour into anxiety. This was more intense than she'd expected. Officer Fuller stood over Nia. "Are you carrying a weapon?" he demanded. From the floor, Nia's voice was clear. "Yes, FBI issued Sig Sauer P320, appendix carry. It's authorized and my credentials are in the purse." Fuller didn't move. He just stared with contempt, daring reality to challenge the narrative in his head. His partner, Officer Webb, finally broke the stalemate. "Rick, for God's sake!" She stepped toward the purse. "Left side zipper," Nia said calmly. "Special Agent Nia Morgan, badge number 8655. Webb knelt and pulled out the credentials case. The golden FBI shield was unmistakable. The photo ID was a perfect match. The documents undeniably real. She stood, turning to her partner. "Rick," she said, her voice urgent. "It's real. She's FBI." Fuller's jaw tightened. "I'll be the judge of that," he snapped. "Could be fake. We run it through dispatch." He had gone too far to back down. Just then, a soft chime cut the tension. The elevator doors behind them slid open. Out stepped Deputy Director Cassandra Shaw. In a tailored Navy suit, she was the embodiment of federal power. She took in the scene in an instant. Her best agent on the floor, one cop hostile, the other ashamed. "What the hell is this?" Her voice wasn't loud, but it sliced through the lobby like a gavel. Every head turned. Nia didn't move. "Morning, Cassandra." Shaw strode toward them, her heels clicking like gunshots on the marble. "Explain to me," she said, her voice a lethal calm, "why my senior agent is on the floor." Fuller stammered. "Ma'am, we got a call. A suspicious individual." "This woman," Shaw interrupted, her voice pure ice, "is Special Agent Nia Morgan. She is here on my direct orders. So I'll ask again, why is she on the floor?" Officer Webb found her voice. "Ma'am, the caller said she was acting erratically. She confirmed she was armed, so we followed procedure." Shaw's gaze was devastating. "Did she resist? Did she threaten anyone?" "No, ma'am." "So you saw a black woman with an earpiece, and your procedure was to throw her on the ground? Is that official Boston PD protocol, officer?" Fuller stood in clenched silence. Slowly, Nia pushed herself to her feet and brushed the dust from her slacks. 8 minutes, she said, her voice flat. "That's how long you treated me like a suspect on your floor." Shaw's jaw tightened. "You're clear, Nia." She turned to Webb, holding out a business card. "That's my direct line if you still need confirmation. She's a 12-year Bureau veteran. We came up together." Webb took the card numbly. Fuller stood like a statue, refusing to look at it. Brenda Mills scurried forward from the reception desk. I was just being cautious," she stammered. Nia turned her head, her tired gaze pinning the woman. "I was standing 2 feet from the building directory," she said. "You could have just asked me who I was here to see." Brenda flinched, speechless. But Shaw wasn't finished. Her focus snapped back to Fuller. "Before I came down, Agent Morgan was reviewing applications for the new FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force." She tilted her head. "And I believe I saw the name Officer Rick Fuller in that pile." A leaden silence fell. Fuller stared, the blood draining from his face. "What?" Shaw's expression was merciless. "You submitted an impressive application. Commendations, arrest record." Nia crossed her arms. "I'd flagged it for an interview," she said, her voice cold as marble. "I thought your file showed good instincts." Fuller swallowed hard, speechless. "You were on the short list for an interview with the FBI," Shaw said, driving the point home. "And you chose this." The weight of it all crushed him. Officer Webb stepped back, her eyes wide. Brenda Mills, seeing the ruin she'd caused, retreated behind her counter. "This," Nia said quietly, "is what prejudice looks like. A phone call, a question not asked, A hand on a gun for 8 minutes because you see a threat instead of a person. I didn't know, Fuller rasped. That's the point, officer, Shaw shot back. You didn't want to know. You saw what you expected to see. Nia looked at Webb. You saw my credentials. You knew. Webb nodded, her face burning with shame. I did. And, she looked down, I didn't overrule him. I should have. We don't choose our tests, officer, Nia said. We only choose how we respond. Just then the elevator chimed again. A man in a sharp suit, the executive from Vertex Solutions Group, stepped out, freezing as he took in the scene. Deputy Director Shaw glanced at Nia. Ready for our briefing? Nia picked up her purse. Let's go. But as they moved toward the elevator, she stopped and looked back at Rick Fuller one last time. The officer seemed to shrink inside his uniform, a man drowning on dry land. I want you to remember this, Nia said, her voice quiet but unforgettable. The only difference between you and me in this lobby today is that I never forgot who I am, and you had no idea who you were. With that, she and Shaw stepped into the elevator. The doors began to slide shut. Just before they sealed, Nia's voice, soft and final, slipped through the gap. 8 minutes, she murmured. The time it takes to burn a career to the ground. The doors closed, leaving Fuller and Webb standing in the wreckage. 3 hours later, Rick Fuller sat in a small, windowless office at the Central Division Precinct. The air was stale. Across the metal desk sat his captain, a grim-faced man named Morrison, and a detective from Internal Affairs. Deputy Director Cassandra Shaw sat in a chair against the wall, a silent, imposing observer. On the desk between them was a single file. Morrison pushed it forward. Officer Webb has given a full and complete statement about the incident at the Monarch Tower, the captain said, his voice heavy with disappointment. Her statement, backed by the building's security footage and a report from Agent Morgan, paints a very clear picture. The IAD detective took over, his voice flat. The picture is of an officer initiating a hostile confrontation without cause, ignoring verified federal credentials, and illegally detaining a federal agent. That's before we address you filing a false report by omitting these key facts. Fuller stared at his hands. I was following procedure. No, Shaw spoke for the first time, her voice cutting him off like a razor. You were on a power trip, and it's over. Captain Morrison sighed. The U.S. Attorney's Office is prepared to file federal charges, deprivation of rights under color of law. That carries a significant prison sentence, Fuller. He paused. However, they are willing to forgo prosecution on one condition. He slid a pen and a single sheet of paper across the desk, a resignation form. You resign, effective immediately. You turn in your badge and your service weapon, and you walk out of here. You will never work in law enforcement in this state again. That is the only deal on the table. Fuller looked up, his eyes pleading. Captain, there's nothing left to say, Morrison said, his voice final. This is the only way out that doesn't end with you in a federal prison. Sign it. For a long moment, Fuller sat frozen. The only sound was the buzz of the fluorescent lights above. Finally, with a trembling hand, he picked up the pen. He signed his name, the ink a black scar on the page. The IAD detective stood up. Your weapon and your shield, officer. Fuller's movements were stiff, robotic. He unholstered his Sig Sauer P320 and placed it on the desk with a heavy clank. Then he reached up and unclipped the badge from his uniform shirt. He held it for a second, the metal feeling impossibly heavy in his palm. He set it down next to the gun. It was over. The authority, the power, the career, all of it gone. Stripped away in an instant, leaving only the bitter taste of his own arrogance.